Good evening. After the mourning of Tisha B'Av has been concluded, after our sorrow over the destruction of the temple, over the exile, even though the exile still continues, the temple still remains destroyed, we leave with a feeling of hope for the future, a prayer that this be our last Tisha B'Av, and that in the merit of the mourning that we've done for the temple and the constructive work that we do, that we will have no further sadness and be blessed with the coming of Mashiach and the rebuilding of the temple. And with that in mind, let's look at the temple was a vehicle for bringing Hashem's presence close to us in the most real and powerful way. But the truth is, even without the temple, we're still able to do that to a great extent with the Mitzvot. The sages teach us, in fact, that the longing for the destruction of the temple, for the rebuilding of the temple, is especially for those who long for something more, to be able to fulfill more mitzvot, to be able to come closer to Hashem. But before we long to become even closer to Hashem, we should certainly try to become as close as we can in our present circumstances. And what we have in the beginning of the Parsha VaEtchanan is what I like to call a meta-Mitzva. It's a mitzvah about the mitzvot. You have many mitzvot, those are the mitzvah. So for example, tefillin is a mitzvah. It's two mitzvot actually. You put tefillin on your arm, a man puts tefillin on his arm, on his head, 6 days a week, except for Shabbat and Yom Tov. That's the mitzvah of tefillin. You have the mitzvah of Shabbat. The two mitzvot again, protect the Shabbat through not doing forbidden actions, sanctify the Shabbat through Kiddush. But then you sometimes have a mitzvah which is about the others. So this is one of them in Perek Daled Pasuk Bet, chapter 4, verse 2. Lo tosifu al hadavar asher anochi metzave etchem. Do not add on to the matter that I command you. So you are not allowed to add on to the mitzvot. There's a discussion exactly how this mitzvah is constituted. But let's take the opinion of the Ramban for now. Let's assume that it means to create a new mitzvah. To say there are no longer 613 mitzvot in the Torah, there are now 614. We're inventing a new mitzvah. That's not allowed. V'lo tigru mimenu, and you may not detract from it. Lishmor et mitzvot Adonai lehechem asher anochi metzaveh etchem. To protect the mitzvot of Hashem your God that I command you today. And I'd like to give 3 angles on these mitzvot. The first one is something that I learned from Rabbi Elazar Zikri, the author of Yedid Nefesh, in his book Sefer Charedim, that he says there are certain fundamental human needs. We need air, water, food, clothing, shelter, etc. You take Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Take away the hierarchy, you have the full list of needs. Self-actualization, fulfillment, love, all of the different things that people need in order to survive, in order to have a meaningful and a purposeful life. So you have all of these human needs. One of them cannot be met by what fulfills the other needs. A person's need for oxygen cannot be met by water. If all you have is water and oxygen, that's what we call drowning. If you have water and oxygen but no food, the person's going to starve, God forbid. So you have all of these things that you have these separate needs which are fulfilled in fundamentally different ways. And Rabbi Zikri says it's the same thing when it comes to our spiritual needs. Our soul craves various ways of connecting to Hashem, various ways of expressing itself in this world. And no one way can fulfill all of these ways. Every different mitzvah is a new and indispensable way of expressing our souls and sustaining our souls, nourishing. The mitzvot are nourishing for our souls. And by leaving some mitzvot out, by a person saying, I don't want to do this mitzvah, I don't feel like doing this mitzvah, I don't accept this mitzvah, what they're really doing is depriving their soul of some essential sustenance. So we can understand why we don't want to detract from the mitzvot. But adding to the mitzvot, why should that be such a problem? After all, you're doing every other mitzvah and more. And presumably it's something we're not talking only, we're certainly not talking only about something destructive. We're not saying that a person wants to keep all the mitzvot and then go around, beating up little old ladies. That's not that's the extra mitzvah. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a guy who comes up with something else which seems not to be particularly harmful. So an idea here from my Rabbi Goldfein of blessed memory is that he said the mitzvot are like medicine. The science of the mitzvot is exact and precise, no less so then medicine and diagnosis for the human body, the mitzvot for the soul, as we mentioned. And he said, if the doctor would give you a prescription for medicine, and a person says, you told me I should take 2 pills a day. Well, if 2 pills is good, well, then 3 pills is better. You told me to take it once a day. Well, if once a day is good, twice a day is better. The person is not going to get more healthy. In fact, the person can become very, very ill. Because, you say you can't have too much of a good thing, but you certainly can. You certainly can. The key is balance. The key is getting it exactly right. Hashem is the perfect doctor, is the perfect prescriber of what we need and what's good for us. And when we follow those, then we're in good shape. The Maggid of Dubno has a different way of looking at it, a very interesting analogy that he says you have 2 neighbors. One comes over to his friend the one day, says, listen, can you please lend me 2 spoons? He says, yeah, sure, no problem. He lends him the spoons. He comes back a little while later and he says, here's the 2 spoons. And he also gives him a teaspoon. He says, no, you only borrowed 2. He says, yeah, but the 2 spoons had children. They had this child. So the guy says, look, okay, he's crazy, right? But it was profitable for me to lend him the spoons. I'm not going to argue. The next time the guy comes around, he says, look, can I borrow your salt and pepper shake? He says, yeah. He borrows the salt and pepper shake. He brings them back with a little pepper shaker. And he says, the salt and pepper shaker had children. He says, fantastic. Next time he comes around, he says, could I borrow... I can't remember exactly what analogy is saying, very expensive. Could I borrow your and your wife's expensive watch? He says, yeah, absolutely. You could do with another watch. He gives the guy the watches. Guy comes back next day. He says, can I have the watch? He says, I'm sorry to tell you, they died. He says, they died? What are you talking about? He says, yeah, no, the watch has died. He says, a watch can't die. He says, well, things can't have children either. Right? Didn't bother you when it was working in your favor. In other words, once the system breaks down, it breaks down. And what the Maggid of Dubno is really saying is that when Hashem has commanded us these mitzvot, we are doing these mitzvot not because it's na'im lanu, not because we think that they're acceptable to us, that they're in. Obviously, when we have the mitzvot, we should try to find ways in which to experience their meaning. But that's not why we do it. We don't do it because I like it. We don't do it because it's meaningful or fulfilling for me. Certainly it should be, but that's not why we do it. We do it because we have this relationship with Hashem, because Hashem is God, because He has given us these mitzvot, because we trust Him, and because we accept His authority. And a person who does the mitzvot and who adds on to the mitzvot is not doing the mitzvot for Hashem, is not doing the mitzvot seeing something bigger than themselves. They're doing the mitzvot based on their own understanding and their own system. And your own understanding is necessary, but not sufficient. You need to be able to go further than that. One of the great benchmarks of a great person is someone who is able to see beyond themselves. And that's part of the idea of the mitzvot. Even once you have the mitzvot, which constantly push us to go beyond our own limitations and our limited selves, don't think, well, now I've got that. Now I understand it. Now I'll come up with new mitzvot. Now I'll be an authority. Then you've lost it. Then you've really lost the point. The idea is that these mitzvot are something great and something transcendent and a beautiful gift from Hashem. And by keeping them in the way that they were given, we keep that. The second we meddle with that or mess with that, we've lost the entire essence of what the mitzvot are there for. Have a wonderful day.